Kris, what is our first main topic today?
This is from Ryan Belts. Greetings, John, Rob, Ray, and Kris. Hi. I know you're excited for Uncharted and said you think it'll take the #1 spot at the box office this weekend. Just saw that they're projecting a $30 million opening. Will that be enough to take the #1 spot? And should they consider that a good result? Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot for saying that in. And as we said off the top here, a couple hours after we're done the John Campea Show here today, we're all going to head over to the movie theater and we're all going to watch us some Uncharted. I'm very excited about it. I don't care. The reviews have been very mixed. But, doesn't matter. I'm in. I want to see this thing. I think the trailers have been good. I love Tom Holland. I think it's going to be fun. Whether I think that after I see the movie, we'll have to see. Guys, make sure you check out our out of the theater quick reaction to the movie that we'll put up a little bit later tonight. One of the questions have been, of course, the big rule for everything is how does it do at the box office? Because the box office not only tells us whether or not the studio made money, it tells us about, was this a kind of movie that the audience wanted to go see? Did the marketing and trailers for this movie work? Did they get the potential audience excited and enticed to drop some money, come to the movie theaters and come see it? There's a lot of information we get from box office. So as we've been approaching Uncharted, a movie you've been waiting for a long time, a couple of big stars in it. Tom Holland is currently the star of the biggest movie in the world with Spider-Man No Way Home. Are they going to rush out to see him in Uncharted? The answer is no, apparently. Because right now, according to the folks over at Variety, they're saying this is going to have a $30 million opening. This comes to us from these guys who write, these days, Tom Holland is never too far from the top of the box office chart. The Spider-Man No Way Home actor is returning to theaters this weekend as a different kind of vigilante in Sony's Uncharted, an action-adventure based on the popular video game franchise. The film is expected to make $27 million between Friday and Sunday and $30 million through President's Day on Monday. Some box office prognosticators believe Uncharted could reach $35 million in its first 4 days in theaters. Those receipts will be enough to easily glide to the #1 spot over last weekend's champion, Death on the Nile, and that is, again, from the good folks over at Variety. All right, #1. This will be the #1 film at the box office this weekend. It's easily going to beat Death on the Nile. I don't think it's going to have any trouble beating Dog. And unless there's some kind of big Spider-Man resurgence, which I don't think there's going to be, this is going to easily be the #1 spot. But sometimes being, like in sex, being first isn't necessarily a good thing, or isn't necessarily good enough.
Wow, that took a turn.
You don't want to be first.
You don't want to race to the finish line.
You don't want to race to the finish line.
Unless you're asked to.
Unless you're asked to, but now we're getting into something completely different. So anyway, first at the box office is great, but that isn't good enough. You also got to, and listen, Uncharted is a movie that costs $120 million to make. That means, conservatively, this is a movie that probably needs to come in around the $280 to $310 million range at the box office to break even. I mean, depending on how much they actually spent on the marketing, which this wasn't the most marketed film in the world. It might actually be, the number might be a little bit lower, but a $30 million opening weekend on a long weekend on top of that, that ain't going to cut it. So what does Uncharted have to rely on then? They would have to rely on those $30 million worth of people loving this film, coming out and just start buzzing about it. Because, it doesn't happen often. It's very rare. But in a rare situation, like, say, the first Venom movie, where the initial critic reaction was mixed to miserable, but people saw it and were like, screw that, this movie's awesome. And we went back to go see it again. That doesn't happen often. You can't rely on that. Can that happen with Uncharted? Well, I don't see that happening. I mean, I may really like it. I hope I really like it. But I don't know. The weather does not look good ahead for Tom Holland and the Funky Bunch and everybody else. It doesn't look like there's good times ahead. I don't care. I'm going to still see it and like it, I hope. But no. Answer your two questions. #1, yes, it will be #1 at the box office. #2, no, it ain't good enough. It needed something bigger than this. I don't know, Rob, you had a chance to see these numbers. First of all, where's your anticipation level right now for going to see Uncharted today? And then #2, could there be some hope here financially if it does come in and take #1?
Look, I mean, I love this video game. We've talked about it over the years. The first Uncharted game really showed me the possibilities, how gaming and movies were definitely moving toward some kind of a new and interesting fusion. That said, this film, again, I think one of the interesting things about video game movies is I understand why they cast Tom Holland and Marky Mark. I understand that. I mean, Mark Wahlberg playing Sully, that to me right away showed that's a stumbling block for me. Nathan Drake is not a kid. Nathan Drake
He was.
Well, yes.
In one of the games.
Well, yes, but that was when he was a prototype. He was Indiana Jones for the modern era. That's what Nathan Drake was. That was what he was conceived as. And I think that while everyone loves Tom Holland as Spider-Man, I don't think everyone loves him as Nathan Drake. And then once you've gone that way with the casting, then the film itself, I think it suffers already. I can say this without having seen the movie. It suffers from everything else video games suffer from. Everybody wants to change the game because you're making a movie. So let's cast this video game movie by Hollywood rules, by putting somebody who is a box office draw in Hollywood to play the character, whether that person's best to be that character or not.
See, this is where I disagree with you, because if they weren't going by, let's just cast somebody who's a big box office draw. Because if that was the case, there are a plethora of 30 to 45-year-old big stars they could have put in this movie. They started with their story. And the story they wanted to start off with was, let's start with a younger Nathan Drake and build his legend over a franchise.
Well, that is exactly the problem.
So you think you just don't like the idea that they decided to start him younger, that you thought they should have started him in the 30 to 45-year-old range?
I think, first of all, Tom Holland was I love Tom Holland. I think he's a great actor.
Let me ask you this, though. If the story is we're starting off with a younger Nathan Drake, do you still think Tom Holland's the wrong guy to cast?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have gone with a different
I would have
person,
gone with
even with the younger guy.
It's the difference between Tom Cruise playing Jack Reacher and Alan Rich playing Jack Reacher. Who's a better Jack Reacher? I like the first Jack Reacher.
I really like the first Jack Reacher.
But Tom Cruise, they cast a movie star in that role, which is great. But is that the best thing for the character of Jack of Reacher? Is that and I think Tom Holland, the problem is, as a human being, he doesn't encompass the physicality of a character like Nathan Drake as portrayed in the video game. I think, and also this idea that they didn't think about, they're like, we're going to build a franchise. Never put your universe before your characters and your story. I understand we have to think ahead. How about make a great movie for once?
But again, I disagree with you on that, because you're making the assumption here that by starting him younger, that automatically means you're not starting with your story. And I'm saying, I just think they wanted to tell their story from a certain way. I mean,
they didn't need a young Nathan Drake when the first Uncharted game dropped. He was already fully formed, love the character, love the story, love the world, love the milieu. Do that. But then they're like, no, we have to go back. And I'm like, they never look at their video games and go, we should do it like that.
Well, I would argue that the video game movies that have been closest to the games have been the worst movies. Well, that's part of it. You yourself are always talking about they really need to focus on good adaptation.
No, I totally agree, but I think that there's a medium that they haven't met yet, and this clearly already, based on the box office and based on the reviews, they didn't nail this. And I'm thinking, what's interesting to me is when I played Uncharted for the first time, I loved it because it was the closest game I'd ever played that was like playing a movie, which is the most ironic thing in the world to me. I'm like, this is ripe for adaptation. This should absolutely work because the game was such a great fusion of character and story and gameplay. And I'm like, how do you mess that up? And I'm not saying I'm sure we're going to enjoy it.
I'm glad you're sure we're going to enjoy it. I'm not terribly sure we're going to enjoy it.
Everyone said the same thing. Like Harloff said, good movie, entertaining movie. It wasn't the game I loved, but it was a good movie. And I'm like, that's the problem.
Is it? Isn't that the problem? I mean, if we
$30 million or $35 million says it is.
If we walk out saying it was a good movie, is it really a problem? Isn't that? And I wonder if there's another thing too here. With the $30 million opening thing, I wonder if we have overestimated the awareness and popularity of the franchise amongst non-gamers. I wonder.
That's true too.
I wonder that as well. So there's a lot of potential.
Gamers out there. It's like this is a huge popular video game franchise. There's been 4 Uncharted and one.
So is World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Well, but I would say the same thing. It's such a weird, it's so bizarre because the problem is the game itself is going to wind up being more entertaining than the movie, more engrossing than the film. That is a problem.
But point me to a video game movie that hasn't been the
no,
case
I know,
with,
but
right?
this particular game is. I'm just saying that when I first played it, I was blown away. This is the very first video game I was so engrossed in. I sat down and played it from beginning to end.
There's not a lot of games like that.
Yeah.
Uncharted, God of War, Last of Us,
Yep.
Red Dead Redemption,
Tomb Raider.
the new
newest
iteration of
yeah.
Tomb
The
Raider.
story
at
mode of
least.
Grand Theft Auto 5. When I first got that, I couldn't stop playing it.
Anyway, Kris, I know more than anybody else I know, you've been the most excited for this movie. Like, just I haven't been able to contain
I
your
haven't been able to
excitement.
shut up about how
It's
much I love
all
this
day.
movie.
My phone blowing up
Just-
all hours of the day from Kris. Countdown
OMG,
to Uncharted.
John, are you so excited? I'm totes thrilled to be going.
What do you think about these numbers we're seeing?
Good for them. Good for them. And it's great if people like this movie and go see it. I'm of this same camp, though, of this isn't an Uncharted movie. And if you name something Uncharted, you're promising me a certain thing. If this was just Tom Holland and Marky Mark going wacky adventures, I'd be like, cool, let's go watch that.
Yeah.
But it's Uncharted. And so I want a certain film. And that game is so cinematic. That's why we're adapting it. That's why we're adapting things like The Last of Us. Because they're beautiful stories that we go, gosh, I want to do that in live action. And sure, there are problems when we do something that's a shot-for-shot remake. I mean, look at Psycho, right? Where we're like, that's literally
Or
the same
not.
movie. Or don't.
Don't.
Or don't. But that's shot-for-shot. Or when we've seen, Watchmen, panels were taken out. That was a very faithful adaptation that didn't work. But this seems so far removed from what I was expecting just because it's shiny, bright, and new. I want some patina on it. I want this to be an adventure movie with a scoundrel.
I think what you just said, one of the great things about the Uncharted game was those backgrounds. You went into those worlds and they were obviously on Earth, but they were fantastical without being too fantastical. And there isn't, at least I can only say this from the trailer, it looks too normal. Even like I love them pulling the Spanish galleons in the air with helicopters, but when they find the Spanish galleons, it looks like they're just kind of in the Goonies cave. It doesn't have that larger than life feel to it, if that makes any sense. And that's not having seen the movie yet.
Yeah, exactly. This is all based on the trailer.
We should point out we haven't seen the movie yet. These two may come out loving this film and I may end up hating it, but we'll find out. Look, here's an uncomfortable kind of question that we need to raise up here, though. I am a big Tom Holland fan. I am. I think the kid's great. I really can't call him kid too much. The guy's mid-20s, but
he's playing kids, right? He just finished playing an 18-year-old.
Yes.
That's the age we see him as.
That's true. And they're trying to have the best of both worlds. But we got to ask this uncomfortable question. I ask this as a fan. If this movie does, I mean, for all I know, this may open up to $50 million. And that actually would be a pretty decent number for it. But if this thing ends up making $30 million, big popular franchise, big popular star, do we have to take a serious look at truly what is the bankability of Tom Holland? Does Tom Holland draw an audience, or does the costume of Spider-Man draw the audience? Because he has had, and we've had this conversation a little bit before already. And by the way, I just realized I forgot to turn on your fan
Elgato.
again. I'll take care of that in a second. I'll get your camera going here in a second. But we have had to bring up this question before about when we look at the succession of films he's done well, like Cherry and things like that. But
He's a good actor.
he is a good actor. But nobody seems to be particularly interested. I am, but other than me, nobody seems to be particularly interested in seeing the movies that he's starring in if it's not, a hyphenated word that ends in man. If it's not a Spider-Man movie, and if you can star in an Uncharted, and if it's not very good, but it only opens up to $30 million, do we have to take a really seriously hard look at, can Tom Holland be a guy that producers go to and say, we can make you our leading man in this? Or is he kind of relegated to playing good roles for movies that don't need to be big hits? I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
I think you've asked a great question. And I think that casting in Hollywood is a big deal. To me, if somebody said to me, Rob, okay, you right away, you give me in 5 seconds cast a Nathan Drake, I would say Chris Pine. Chris Pine would be a Nathan Drake character because I see him close to how he was. Maybe he's a little too pretty, but to me, that's of his ilk. Watching that new, it's whether it's Nathan Fillion obviously is what everybody wanted. He was in, but
you could grime up Pine's good though. I mean, if we can make Cavill look like The Witcher, come on.
I mean that's, but the thing is, I think that Tom Holland has been miscast. And I think he's miscast in this. I thought he was miscast in Cherry. He's good. He's doing the best he can with these roles. You can't say that he's not a great actor.
He's a fine actor.
I really think he is a fine
really
actor.
Good, yeah.
But you've got to give him something that is both age appropriate and that he can carry. He's also, I mean, he's a tiny guy. He's not a big guy.
He is ripped though.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, he is the physicality. When he can do things a lot of actors cannot do physically.
Absolutely, but you know, I'm the problem is Nathan Drake is an Indiana Jones clone, and that's what I'm looking for. That's what I would expect out of this, and I think that was. I understand from a studio perspective, how many bankable people can you bet $120 million on now? There aren't many. So I understand why they did it, but I'm just like, even when I watch the trailers, I love Tom Holland. I love his screen presence, but watching him in Uncharted, even what he's doing, I'm like, I don't buy it. I don't buy the verisimilitude of Tom Holland playing Nathan Drake, even if he's playing a younger Nathan Drake, because he ain't going to grow up to be like some six foot beefy dude that can travel the world and beat the hell out of people.
But we got to keep in mind, still, this is still a movie we haven't seen.
It's true.
Right, so we're all basing this on 2-minute trailers.
Right, but I don't think my feeling about him as Nathan Drake is going to change. This is an existential
and it may not.
opinion.
It may not. Anyway, guys, the question is for you. What do you think about this? I mean, Uncharted is easily going to take number one, and that's the first thing you got to do. Take number one at the box office. But if it is coming in at 30 million, number one, be it as it may, that ain't enough to justify, because you can't lose money if you're an Uncharted movie with these types of stars in it. Questions for you guys. What do you think about all this? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your
John, can I say one
thoughts.
more thing?
Sure.
I want to love this movie. I want people to know I'm not a hater here. I really want to love this film. I really do.
I think you want to love every movie you go in to see. I think most film fans should want to love a movie you go in to see.
I love this franchise.
Some of us are more optimistic than the others. I don't know.
I do not
I'm probably
share
I'm probably gonna hate. Hey guys, we want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Peloton. Now listen, in the never-ending quest to try to stay in shape, one of the keys is to vary up your workout and your exercises to make sure you avoid losing your motivation and keep from getting burnt out from doing the same thing over and over again. Peloton has you covered. I know for me, one of the keys was getting my Peloton tread and using the Peloton app to get my varied workouts in. And Peloton just keeps pushing you forward with new classes, new music, new ways to keep your workouts fun and motivating. One of the newer offerings that has me personally really excited is their boxing classes. Peloton is stepping into the ring with its newest discipline, and you don't even have to have any gloves. Discover a fast, furious, and fun workout with Peloton instructors in your corner. Even if you've never boxed before, these classes will have you working up a sweat while working on the fundamentals of form, footwork, and fun combos that will keep you on your toes. Peloton has a workout for every day and every kind of schedule. So guys, right now, visit onepeloton.com to learn more. That's ONEPELOTON.com.